I'm Eleanor Wilson, 68 years old, and I've been living at Sunny Pines Nursing Home for 3 years now. My son Gregory hadn't visited me once in 2 years until yesterday, when he suddenly appeared at my door. His expensive suit couldn't hide his desperate expression as he asked me for $300,000 for his business. I simply told him to come back tomorrow. What he didn't know was that before his return, I had something planned he would never expect. If this story about family betrayal and standing up for yourself resonates with you, please like and subscribe. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and join me as I share how I finally reclaimed my power after years of heartbreak. Franklin and I married young. We were just 22, fresh out of college and full of dreams. We settled in a modest suburb of Chicago, where Franklin worked as an accountant and I taught 5th grade at Oak Ridge Elementary. Gregory came along 3 years later, our miracle baby after doctors told me I might never conceive. From the moment I held him, I knew I would give him everything I possibly could. Life was simple but good. We took summer vacations to the lake, saved for college, and built the kind of stable family I'd always dreamed of. Franklin worked long hours but always made time for Gregory's baseball games and school events. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and most importantly, we were happy. Then came that terrible Tuesday in November. Gregory was just 12. Franklin had gone for his morning jog like any other day. The neighbor found him collapsed on the sidewalk just 2 blocks from our house. The doctors said it was a massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. Everything changed overnight. I became both mother and father to a confused, angry preteen boy. The life insurance helped initially, but it wasn't enough to sustain us long-term. I kept my teaching job and took on evening bookkeeping work for local businesses. My days started at 5 a.m. and often didn't end until after midnight. While other teachers spent evenings grading papers at home, I was reconciling accounts at Barton's Hardware or the local veterinary clinic. Gregory was a bright child, always bringing home excellent grades without much effort. But as he entered his teenage years, I noticed changes. He began expecting things rather than appreciating them. When his friends got new video game systems, he demanded the same. When he outgrew his clothes, only the popular brands would do. I tried to explain our financial situation, but he would storm off, slamming doors and claiming I didn't understand how important these things were for his social standing. By his senior year of high school, Gregory had become increasingly distant. He received a partial scholarship to State University, but needed additional funds for tuition and living expenses. I made the difficult decision to sell our family home, moving myself into a small 1-bedroom condo so Gregory could attend college without loans. I thought education was the greatest gift I could give him, something no one could ever take away. College transformed Gregory. He majored in business with a focus on marketing and thrived in that environment. His natural charm and intelligence caught the attention of professors and future employers alike. By graduation, he had secured a position at a prestigious marketing firm in Atlanta, 6 hours away from our hometown. At first, Gregory called weekly. He would tell me about his projects, his new apartment, the people he was meeting. I saved every penny I could to visit him once that first year, taking the bus to avoid expensive airfare. He seemed embarrassed by my simple clothes and practical luggage as he showed me around his sleek city life, but I was too proud of his accomplishments to care. As Gregory climbed the corporate ladder, our communication dwindled. Calls became monthly, then only on holidays. When he married Vanessa 5 years after college, I saw a brief improvement. She was a lovely woman, a kindergarten teacher with a warm smile who sent me birthday cards and encouraged Gregory to maintain family connections. For 3 years, we managed holiday gatherings and occasional weekend visits. Then came the divorce. Gregory never fully explained what happened, only that they had grown apart. 6 months later, he married Rebecca, a polished woman who worked at his company. From our first meeting, I sensed her discomfort around me. My stories about Gregory's childhood seemed to bore her, and she would check her phone constantly during our rare visits. After they married, Gregory's excuses for missing holidays and birthdays multiplied. His work was demanding. They had prior commitments. The weather made travel difficult. By the time I reached retirement age at 65, I had accepted that my relationship with my son existed primarily through brief phone calls on Christmas and Mother's Day. Meanwhile, my health began deteriorating. Arthritis made my teaching job increasingly difficult, and a minor stroke scared me enough to finally retire. I hoped retirement might give me the opportunity to visit Gregory more, perhaps rebuild our relationship, but he always seemed too busy for extended visits. I sent cards for every birthday and Christmas, always including a small check I could barely afford. The cards I received in return were signed by both Gregory and Rebecca, but written in the same elegant script that I knew belonged to Rebecca. The personal touches had long disappeared from our relationship, replaced by obligation and formality. Still, I held on to hope. Whenever the phone rang, my heart would jump with anticipation. Maybe this time, it would be Gregory calling just to chat, to check on me, to tell me he was thinking about his mother. But those calls never came. My world changed again 3 years ago. I was watering my small collection of houseplants when my foot caught on the edge of the area rug. One moment I was standing, the next I was on the floor, searing pain shooting through my hip. I managed to drag myself to the phone and call for help, but I spent 6 terrifying hours alone before the ambulance arrived. The diagnosis was a broken hip requiring surgery and extensive rehabilitation. My doctor, Dr. Reynolds, gently suggested that living alone was no longer safe for me. "You need regular care, Eleanor," she said, her kind eyes full of concern. "Have you considered assisted living?" Gregory flew in for a brief 24 hours. He looked uncomfortable in the hospital room, standing stiffly by the window rather than sitting at my bedside. We discussed finances and options. I would sell my condo and use the proceeds, along with my retirement savings, to fund my stay at Sunny Pines nursing home. However, I kept a separate account with $300,000 from Franklin's life insurance that I had never touched, my emergency fund for whatever life might throw at me next. "I'll visit every week, Mom," Gregory promised as he prepared to leave. "And we'll bring you home for holidays. This is just temporary until you're stronger." I wanted to believe him. Perhaps this health crisis would remind him of what was truly important in life. The first missed visit came with a phone call. "Unexpected meeting with potential clients," Gregory explained. "I'll make it up next week." But next week brought another excuse, and then another. Christmas approached, and rather than the promised visit to his home, I received a gift basket with a card signed by their assistant. Sunny Pines wasn't a bad place. My room was small but private, with a window overlooking a courtyard garden where residents could sit in good weather. The staff was generally kind, though overworked. I quickly learned which nurses would take an extra minute to chat, and which were just doing their jobs. Patricia was my favorite. A night nurse in her 50s with salt and pepper hair always escaping from her practical bun. She would sometimes sit with me during her breaks. She found me crying one night after another unanswered call to Gregory. "Family can break your heart in ways nobody else can," she said, patting my hand. "My son didn't speak to me for 8 years after I remarried. Sometimes we have to build new families where we are." Patricia introduced me to Martha, another resident whose children rarely visited. Martha was 75, a former librarian with a quick wit and a collection of mystery novels she generously shared. We began taking our meals together, attending the facility's limited activities as a pair, creating our own small family of circumstance. My 65th birthday passed without acknowledgement from Gregory. When the facility hosted a family day that summer, I declined to list any family members to notify. "No one available to attend," I wrote on the form, the words burning my eyes with unshed tears. The hardest moments were watching other residents with their visitors. Children bringing grandchildren who filled the sterile rooms with laughter and life. Husbands visiting wives, sitting in companionable silence holding hands that had been intertwined for decades. After these family days, the quiet in my room became deafening. My health issues compounded. The emotional stress of abandonment manifested physically. My blood pressure became difficult to control. I developed insomnia that left me exhausted during the day. Dr. Reynolds prescribed medications that helped my body, but couldn't touch the ache in my heart. Martha recognized my spiral and pushed me to find purpose. "We may be old, Eleanor, but we're not dead yet," she declared one morning over bland oatmeal. "What did you love about teaching? Could you bring that here?" Her question sparked something in me. I approached the activities director about starting a reading program for residents. Many of our peers had vision problems that prevented independent reading, while others were simply lonely for human connection. 3 times a week, I would read aloud in the community room. Everything from classics to current bestsellers Martha helped me select. The reading circle grew. Residents who rarely left their rooms began appearing for story time. Some who seldom spoke would engage in lively discussions about plot and characters. In giving to others, I found a piece of myself again. Still, there were nights when I would lie awake, wondering where I had gone wrong with Gregory. Had I been too strict? Too lenient? Had Franklin's death left a wound that never properly healed? I replayed our last conversations, searching for clues, for the moment when my son decided his mother was no longer worth his time. 2 full years passed without a single visit. Phone calls dwindled to predictable, brief exchanges on major holidays. I learned to live with the pain, to push it down deep where it couldn't disable me daily. I built a life within these walls, with friends who understood abandonment because they lived it too. We became each other's family, celebrating birthdays and holidays together, supporting each other through health scares and bad days. I was no longer waiting by the phone. I was no longer expecting Gregory to remember he had a mother. I had accepted my reality and found ways to make it meaningful. Then on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, everything changed again. It was a day like any other. I had finished my morning physical therapy session, struggling through exercises that kept my arthritic joints functioning, but never without pain. Lunch had been unremarkable, some type of casserole with a side of canned fruit. I was resting in my room, reading a mystery Martha had recommended, when a knock at my door interrupted the quiet. I assumed it was Patricia, though it wasn't her usual shift time. "Come in," I called, not looking up immediately. "Mom." The voice froze me. I slowly raised my eyes to find Gregory standing awkwardly in my doorway. For a moment I thought I might be hallucinating, that perhaps my medication had stronger side effects than usual. But no, it was truly him, flesh and blood, looking uncomfortable in my small institutional room. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my nursing home fees. His hair was expertly cut and styled, but I noticed new lines around his eyes and a tightness to his mouth that hadn't been there before. He looked successful but not happy. "Gregory," I managed, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "This is unexpected." He stepped inside, glancing around at my humble surroundings. My few personal items seemed to embarrass him. The faded family photos, the handmade Afghan from a residence crafting circle, the outdated television set. "I was in town for business," he said, the explanation sounding rehearsed. "Thought I should stop by and see how you're doing." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. 2 years without a visit, and now he appeared as if we'd seen each other last week. "You look good, Mom," he continued, though his eyes darted away from my wheelchair and the medication organizer on my nightstand. "How's the food here? Are they treating you well?" We engaged in stilted small talk. He asked about my daily routine without really listening to my answers. He commented on the weather as if we were strangers in an elevator. All the while, his fingers tapped nervously against his expensive leather briefcase. After 20 minutes of this charade, Gregory pulled out his phone. "Let me take a photo to show Rebecca." She wanted to come, but she's swamped with work. I smiled dutifully for the camera, knowing the photo would likely never be shown to anyone. It was just another prop in whatever performance he was giving. Eventually, Gregory steered the conversation toward his business ventures. "The marketing agency has been doing really well," he said, leaning forward slightly. "We've expanded to 3 new states in the last year. The client list keeps growing." "That's wonderful," I replied, waiting for what I now sensed was coming. "But you know how business goes. Sometimes cash flow gets tight during expansion." His voice shifted subtly, taking on the smooth cadence he'd perfected in his professional life. "We've got this amazing opportunity to acquire a smaller agency with some major clients. It would double our revenue within a year." I watched him, this stranger wearing my son's face, as he launched into what was clearly a practiced pitch. "The thing is, Mom, we need capital for the acquisition. The banks are being difficult with lending right now. I hate to ask, but..." He paused as if reluctant, though his eyes betrayed his eagerness. I know Dad's life insurance set aside some money for emergencies. This would be a temporary loan, $300,000. I'd pay it back with interest within 18 months. The amount hung in the air between us. $300,000. The exact amount I had kept separate all these years. He must have remembered the figure from our financial discussions when I moved to Sunny Pines. This is exactly what Dad would have wanted, Gregory continued, playing his trump card. For his money to help build something lasting, a legacy for the family. And once we're more established, Rebecca and I could help with your expenses here. Maybe even find you a better facility. He reached for my hand, the first physical contact he'd initiated. Plus, we'd visit more often. I know I've been absent, and I'm sorry for that. Work has been all-consuming, but things will settle once this acquisition goes through. I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the desperation behind his confident smile, the slight sheen of sweat at his temples despite the room's cool temperature. I saw the practiced way he squeezed my hand, the same technique he likely used on potential clients. I saw a man I no longer knew, using our relationship, or what remained of it, for financial gain. I'll need to think about it, I said finally. Can you come back tomorrow? Say around 2 in the afternoon. Relief flooded his face. In his mind, he'd already spent the money. Of course, Mom. Take all the time you need. I can come back tomorrow at 2. He stood, smoothing his expensive suit. You won't regret this. It's going to be great for all of us. I nodded, not committing to anything. It was nice to see you, Gregory. With promises to return tomorrow, he left as suddenly as he had appeared, the scent of his cologne lingering in my small room. I sat motionless for several minutes after his departure, processing what had just occurred. Then, alone in my room, I finally allowed the tears to come. Not gentle tears of sadness, but racking sobs that bent me double in my chair. 2 years without a visit, and he had come only to ask for money. My son, my only child, the person for whom I had sacrificed everything, saw me as nothing more than a potential investor. When the tears finally subsided, I was left with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The time for wishful thinking was over. Tonight would require difficult decisions and decisive action. Sleep was impossible that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Gregory's practiced smile, heard his smooth pitch echoing in my mind. Instead of fighting the insomnia, I embraced it, using the quiet hours to think more clearly than I had in years. I pulled out the small photo album I kept in my nightstand drawer. The earliest photos showed a beaming Franklin holding newborn Gregory, his face a mixture of terror and adoration. I traced Franklin's features with my finger, remembering his last days in the hospital after his diagnosis, when we knew the heart condition would take him soon. Trust actions, not words, Ellie, he had told me, his voice weak but his eyes intense. People will tell you whatever they think you want to hear. Watch what they do instead. It was advice he'd followed throughout his accounting career, and wisdom I should have applied to our son long ago. At midnight, I reached for the phone. Richard Peterson had been our family attorney since before Gregory was born. Now in his 70s, he still maintained a small practice. I knew I was waking him, but this couldn't wait. Eleanor. His voice was alert despite the hour. Is everything all right? I need your help, Richard, I said, explaining Gregory's visit and request. I want to protect my money but also do right by my son. Can you come to Sunny Pines tomorrow morning? I need to establish a trust. Richard didn't question my judgment or suggest I was overreacting. He simply said, I'll be there at 9 with the paperwork. We'll make sure your wishes are respected. After hanging up, I called Patricia at home, something I'd never done before. She answered on the second ring. It's Eleanor Wilson, I said apologetically. I'm sorry to bother you at home, but I'm facing a situation. Patricia listened as I explained, then said without hesitation, I'll come in early tomorrow. My shift doesn't start until noon, but I'll be there for the meeting if you want moral support. While waiting for Martha's light to go on across the hall, she suffered from insomnia as bad as mine. I pulled out my laptop, a gift from the reading group for my birthday. Gregory's company wasn't difficult to find online. The website was polished and professional, showcasing impressive clients and growth. But a deeper search revealed concerning news articles about pending lawsuits from former clients alleging fraudulent practices and misappropriation of advertising funds. When Martha's light finally appeared beneath her door around 2 a.m., I carefully navigated my walker across the hall. She opened the door immediately to my soft knock, as if she'd been expecting me. "Can't sleep?" she asked, already moving to put on water for tea. "Gregory came today," I said, settling into her visitor's chair. Martha's eyebrows shot up. The prodigal son returns. What prompted this miracle? As we sipped chamomile tea, I told her everything. Martha listened without interruption, her librarian's face thoughtful and analytical. "Have you considered calling his ex-wife?" she asked when I finished. "Vanessa, was it? She might have insights that could help you understand what's really happening." It was a brilliant suggestion. I still had Vanessa's number saved in my old address book, though I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce 5 years ago. It was nearly 3 a.m., too late to call, but I could try in the morning. "Whatever you decide," Martha said as I prepared to return to my room. "Remember that you deserve respect. Don't let guilt make this decision for you." Back in my room, I couldn't resist looking through Gregory's old cards and letters, stored in a shoebox under my bed. His childish handwriting on Mother's Day cards. "I love you to the moon and back." A letter from summer camp. "I miss you so much, Mom." His graduation card. "Couldn't have done it without you." Somewhere between that grateful young man and today, something had gone terribly wrong. Perhaps it was my fault for giving too much, for never requiring accountability. Perhaps it was the influence of Rebecca, or the corrupting nature of chasing success at any cost. The why didn't matter anymore. Only the what came next. At 6 a.m. I called Susan Bailey, the manager at First National Bank where my accounts were held. "I need to make a significant withdrawal," I explained after apologizing for the early call. "It's important that everything is prepared by noon today. For withdrawal of that amount, we typically require advance notice," Susan began, but I interrupted gently. "Susan, I've banked with you for 30 years. This is urgent and important. I need your help." She paused, then said, "I'll have everything ready by noon, Mrs. Wilson." My final call before breakfast was to Vanessa. I was surprised when she answered immediately. "Eleanor? Is everything okay?" Her voice was warm with genuine concern. "I'm fine, Vanessa, but I need some information. Gregory came to see me yesterday after 2 years of absence. He's asking for a substantial loan." Vanessa's long sigh told me everything before she even spoke. "Oh, Eleanor. How much?" $300,000. "For his business?" "Yes. How did you know?" What followed was a 30-minute conversation that confirmed my worst fears. According to Vanessa, Gregory had a gambling problem that had started during their marriage and contributed to their divorce. He had apparently hidden it well, covering losses with new credit cards and loans from friends. His business was indeed successful, but his personal finances were a disaster due to his gambling debts. Vanessa suspected Rebecca had initially been unaware of the extent of his problems. "Be careful, Eleanor," Vanessa warned before hanging up. "When I refused to bail him out again, he cut me out of his life completely. He can be vindictive when he doesn't get what he wants." By breakfast time, I had developed a comprehensive plan. I would not be giving Gregory $300,000 with no strings attached. But neither would I completely abandon my son when he was clearly in trouble, regardless of his treatment of me. I needed to find a middle path, one that offered help without enabling destructive behavior. With newfound determination, I prepared for the day ahead. It would be difficult and painful, but necessary. Sometimes love means setting boundaries, especially when it's hard. I awoke at 5:30 a.m. after barely 2 hours of fitful sleep. Yet I felt more alert than I had in months. Purpose has a way of energizing even the most exhausted body. Today would change everything, and I needed to be prepared. First, I took extra care with my appearance. My arthritic fingers struggled with buttons and clasps, but I persisted. I selected my best outfit, a navy blue dress with subtle white piping that Patricia had once complimented. I applied light makeup, something I rarely bothered with inside the nursing home. I even asked the morning aide, Sophia, to help style my silver hair away from my face. "Special occasion today, Mrs. Wilson?" Sophia asked as she gently worked a comb through my hair. My son is visiting, I replied simply. Let her assume it was a happy reunion. In the dining room, Martha was already waiting at our usual table, her knowing eyes taking in my polished appearance. You clean up nice, Eleanor, she said, pushing a cup of coffee toward me. How are you feeling? Nervous, I admitted. But certain. Martha nodded approvingly. Good. Certainty is power. Too many of us waste our final years trying to please people who don't deserve it. I managed to eat half a piece of toast and some fruit, knowing I would need strength for the confrontation ahead. As I was finishing my coffee, Thomas Jenkins, the facility director, approached our table. Mrs. Wilson, I understand you've requested the use of our conference room this afternoon, he said. Yes, for a private family meeting. I hope that's not a problem. Thomas smiled warmly. Not at all. In fact, I've arranged for the small meeting room off the library. It's more comfortable and private than the main conference room. Will that work for you? His kindness touched me. Though we'd had limited interactions, Thomas had always treated residents with dignity rather than as burdens. That would be perfect, thank you. After breakfast, I returned to my room to find Patricia waiting, though she wasn't scheduled to work until later. She wore civilian clothes rather than her nurse's scrubs, a simple blouse and skirt that made her look younger somehow. I thought you might want help getting your documents together, she offered. And moral support for your banking errand. Richard Peterson arrived promptly at 9, looking much as he always had, though his once black hair was now completely white. He carried a leather briefcase filled with legal documents and greeted me with the formal courtesy I'd always appreciated in him. I've drafted the trust documents based on our conversation, he explained, laying out papers on my small table. But I need to understand exactly what you want to accomplish here, Eleanor. For the next hour, Richard and I discussed options while Patricia occasionally offered insights from her own experience with troubled family members. We settled on an irrevocable trust that would serve multiple purposes: protection for Gregory if he sought treatment, future educational funds for any grandchildren, and safeguards to ensure I retained enough for my own care. Once you sign these papers, Richard warned, you cannot change the terms or access these funds directly again. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want? I took a deep breath and nodded. I'm certain. This protects everyone, including Gregory from himself. At 11:30, Jennifer Morris, a notary public Richard had arranged, arrived to witness my signatures. Her official stamp made each document final and binding. As she worked, I received a text message from Gregory confirming he would arrive at 2 p.m. and would be bringing Rebecca. Good, I said, perhaps too sharply. I'd like to meet with both of them. By noon, Patricia accompanied me to the bank where Susan had prepared everything as promised. The withdrawal was processed efficiently, and the necessary funds were transferred directly to the trust account Richard had established. The remaining steps were handled electronically, with Richard making several calls to ensure everything was properly recorded. Upon returning to Sunny Pines, Thomas showed us the meeting room he had prepared. A polished wooden table with comfortable chairs dominated the space. A pitcher of water and glasses had been thoughtfully provided. The room felt professional and dignified, exactly the setting I needed. I took the liberty of bringing a few things from your room, Patricia said, placing several framed photos on the table. Gregory's graduation picture, a family portrait from when he was 10, his wedding photo with Vanessa. I arranged the photos carefully, along with the folder containing copies of the trust documents and a small stack of Gregory's childhood cards and letters I had selected. At 1:30, I returned to my room to compose myself. Standing before the small bathroom mirror, I practiced what I would say, keeping my voice steady and my expression calm. I would not allow emotion to overtake me during the meeting. There would be time for feelings afterward. I experienced a brief moment of panic as the reality of what I was about to do hit me. Was I being too harsh? Should I just give Gregory the money and hope for the best? A lifetime of maternal instinct urged me to protect and provide for my child, regardless of his behavior. Then I remembered Franklin's words. Trust actions, not words. Gregory's actions had spoken clearly for years. I took several deep breaths, using the techniques Dr. Reynolds had taught me for managing anxiety. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 7, out through the mouth for 8. Repeat until the heart stops racing. At 1:45, Patricia knocked gently on my door. "They're here early," she said. "Richard has shown them to the meeting room." I nodded, straightening my dress one last time. "Then let's not keep them waiting." With Patricia walking supportively beside me, I made my way toward the most difficult conversation of my life, head held high and resolve unwavering. The meeting room fell silent as I entered. Gregory and Rebecca sat on one side of the table, both impeccably dressed in business attire that seemed excessive for a nursing home visit. Richard stood near the window, his professional demeanor calming in the charged atmosphere. I took my place at the head of the table, with Patricia quietly sitting in a corner chair, present but unobtrusive. Gregory's eyes widened slightly at the formal setup. This clearly wasn't the quick, private transaction he had anticipated. "Mom," he began, his voice already taking on that persuasive tone I'd heard yesterday. "You didn't need to arrange all this. I could have just met you in your room." "I preferred a more appropriate setting for a business discussion," I replied evenly. "And that's what this is, isn't it? Business." Rebecca shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her manicured nails tapping against her designer handbag. She was younger than Gregory by at least 5 years, attractive in a polished way, with expertly highlighted hair and subtle but expensive jewelry. She hadn't spoken yet, her eyes darting between Gregory and me. "I suppose you're wondering why I've asked Richard to join us," I continued, gesturing toward my attorney. "After your visit yesterday, I realized we needed professional guidance for the transaction you proposed." Gregory's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's very thorough of you, Mom, but I've already drawn up a simple promissory note. We can keep this between family." I didn't respond directly to his suggestion. Instead, I reached for the first photo frame. Gregory at age 7, missing his 2 front teeth, beaming with Franklin and me on either side of him. "I've been reflecting on our family history," I said, my voice softer now. "Do you remember this day? It was your first baseball game. You struck out 3 times but still wanted ice cream to celebrate just participating." Gregory glanced at the photo with obvious impatience. "Mom, we can take a walk down memory lane another time. Today we should focus on the investment opportunity one mentioned." "This isn't a detour, Gregory. This is precisely the point." I placed another photo before him. His high school graduation. "I sold our family home to pay for your college education. Your father and I believed education was the most valuable gift we could give you. And I've put that education to good use," he countered quickly. "My business is thriving. This acquisition will take it to the next level." I pulled out the folder containing the research I'd done overnight. "Is it really thriving? Because according to these articles, your agency is facing 3 lawsuits from former clients alleging misappropriation of funds." Gregory's face flushed. "Those are baseless accusations from competitors trying to damage our reputation. They'll be dismissed." "And what about your gambling debts?" I asked quietly. The question landed like a physical blow. Gregory recoiled while Rebecca's head snapped toward him, her expression a mixture of shock and anger. "What gambling debts?" she demanded. "You told me those credit card charges were business expenses." Gregory shot me a look of pure betrayal. "Who have you been talking to?" "Vanessa. She's a liar who's still bitter about our divorce." "I spoke with several people," I replied calmly. The details were consistent and concerning. "You have a problem, Gregory. One that money alone won't solve." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this. If you don't want to help me, just say so. Don't fabricate reasons to justify your selfishness." "Sit down, Gregory," Richard interjected firmly. "Your mother deserves your respect and attention, especially considering what she's prepared to offer." Curiosity won out over anger, and Gregory slowly returned to his seat. "What offer?" I nodded to Richard, who slid a bound document across the table. "I've established a trust with the $300,000 you requested," I explained, "but with specific conditions." Gregory reached for the document eagerly, but his expression darkened as he read the first page. "What is this? A treatment program requirement? Quarterly drug testing? Monthly financial oversight? This is insulting. It's help, I corrected him. Real help, not enabling. The trust will cover the full cost of a gambling addiction treatment program. After 1 year of proven sobriety and financial responsibility, you'll receive a monthly stipend to help rebuild your life and business legitimately. And the remainder, Richard added, is reserved for educational trusts for any current or future children you may have. Mrs. Wilson wants to ensure her grandchildren have the same educational opportunities you received. Gregory slammed the document down. This is about control. You never thought I could succeed on my own, and now you're using my temporary financial setback to infantilize me. No, Gregory. This is about love. I leaned forward, holding his gaze steadily. Real love sometimes means saying no when every instinct tells you to say yes. It means helping someone face their demons rather than helping them hide from consequences. I don't have a gambling problem, he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. I've made some risky investments that didn't pan out. That's business, not addiction. Rebecca had been silent throughout this exchange, her eyes fixed on the trust document. Now she spoke, her voice surprisingly steady. The monthly bank statements, the cash withdrawals, the business trips to Las Vegas and Atlantic City. She looked up at Gregory. It makes sense now. Rebecca, don't, Gregory warned. She ignored him, addressing me directly for the first time. How did you know? We've kept this so private. I thought we were just having cash flow problems with the business. A mother knows when something isn't right, I said simply. And I've had years of silence to observe from a distance, to piece together the inconsistencies in the few stories I did hear. Gregory's face contorted with anger. So this is your revenge for me not visiting enough? Setting up impossible conditions, humiliating me in front of my wife and a stranger. This isn't revenge, Gregory. It's a lifeline. I pushed the childhood cards he had written me across the table. The boy who wrote these loved his mother. He was honest and had integrity. That boy is still inside you somewhere, beneath the addiction and the deception. I'm trying to help him find his way back. I don't need to be saved, he spat, standing again. And I certainly don't need your money with these ridiculous strings attached. Keep it. Enjoy your lonely life in this depressing place. Rebecca, we're leaving. But Rebecca didn't move. She was still reading the trust document, tears now streaming silently down her face. Rebecca, Gregory repeated, his voice sharp. Let's go. I can't do this anymore, Greg, she whispered. The lies, the missing money, the constant stress. She looked up at him, her makeup smearing. Your mother is offering real help, and you're throwing it back in her face because of your pride. Don't you dare take her side, Gregory hissed. There are no sides here, I interjected. Only people who care about you, trying to help before it's too late. Gregory looked around the room, seeming to realize he was alone in his position. His face cycled through emotions, anger, shame, fear, and finally a cold, distant mask. You'll regret this, Mother, he said, the formal address cutting like a knife. When you're even older and sicker, with no one to advocate for you, you'll wish you had kept me in your life instead of driving me away with your conditions and judgments. Richard stepped forward. That's enough, Mr. Wilson. Your mother has made her decision. The trust is irrevocable. These terms cannot be changed. You can accept the help offered or walk away. But threats are inappropriate and unhelpful. Gregory grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. This isn't over, he said, then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The room fell silent. Rebecca remained seated, tears still falling. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Wilson, she finally said. I had no idea he was coming to ask you for money. He told me we were visiting because you were ill. Are you all right, dear? I asked, genuinely concerned. Has he ever been violent with you? She shook her head quickly. No, never physical. Just manipulative. Gaslighting me when money disappeared or when I questioned his late nights. I've suspected something was wrong for over a year, but he always had explanations. I moved to sit beside her, taking her trembling hand in mine. The trust includes resources for you too. Legal support if you need it, counseling services. Whatever happens between you and Gregory, you don't have to face it alone. Rebecca looked at me with genuine surprise. Why would you help me? We've barely spoken 3 times in 5 years. Because you matter, I said simply. And because I recognize the look of someone trapped in a situation they don't know how to escape. I've worked with women in similar circumstances during my teaching career. She squeezed my hand gratefully before standing. I should go. He's probably waiting in the car. Getting angrier by the minute. Be safe, I urged. And remember, the offer of help stands regardless of what happens with Gregory. After Rebecca left, Patricia moved from her corner to sit beside me. Are you all right, Eleanor? That was intense. I realized I was trembling slightly, the adrenaline of confrontation beginning to ebb. I think so. It went about as I expected, though I had hoped he might be more receptive. Richard gathered his papers. You did the right thing, Eleanor. The trust protects your assets while still offering Gregory a path forward if he chooses to take it. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they're ready for help. What if he never accepts it? I asked quietly. What if I've truly lost my son forever? Patricia patted my shoulder gently. Then you'll know you tried everything possible. You offered love with boundaries, which is the healthiest kind of love there is. As Richard and Patricia helped me back to my room, I felt a complex mixture of sadness and relief. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth without fear of abandonment, because I had already experienced the abandonment and survived it. Whatever happened next, I had stood up for myself and for what I believed was right. That evening, alone in my room, I finally allowed myself to grieve. Not just for today's painful encounter, but for years of slow disconnection, for the relationship that should have been, for the son I remembered and the man he had become. The tears came freely, but they felt different somehow. Not tears of helpless sorrow, but of release and perhaps the beginning of healing. The day after the confrontation with Gregory, I felt strangely empty, as if a storm had passed through my life, leaving eerie quiet in its wake. My emotions swung between certainty that I'd done the right thing and gut-wrenching fear that I'd severed our relationship beyond repair. Thomas stopped by my room that morning. Mrs. Wilson, I wanted to check on you. The staff mentioned there was some tension at your family meeting yesterday. His genuine concern touched me. It was difficult, I admitted, but necessary. We have a counselor who visits weekly if you'd like to schedule some time, he offered. Dr. Abigail Hayes specializes in family estrangement issues among seniors. I accepted gratefully, and my weekly sessions with Dr. Abigail became an unexpected lifeline. A compassionate woman in her 40s with a practical approach to emotional healing, she helped me navigate the complex grief of having a living child who was absent from my life. What you're experiencing is ambiguous loss, she explained in our first session. It's particularly challenging because there's no closure, no finality. Your son is alive, so you can't complete the mourning process, yet he's absent, so you can't have the relationship either. The nursing home community rallied around me in subtle ways after word spread about Gregory's visit and departure. Martha brought extra books to our reading sessions, selecting stories about resilience and renewal. Patricia checked on me during her shifts, sometimes just sitting quietly with me when words seemed inadequate. Even residents I barely knew shared small kindnesses. A saved dessert, a handmade card, an invitation to join their table at dinner. 2 weeks after Gregory's stormy exit, I received an unexpected letter. The envelope bore Rebecca's neat handwriting with no return address. Inside was a brief note. Dear Eleanor, Gregory entered a treatment program yesterday. It was not an easy decision, and I don't know what the future holds for our marriage, but he's finally getting help. I wanted you to know your actions made a difference, even if it doesn't seem that way right now. Take care. Rebecca. I read the letter multiple times, relief and cautious hope warming my heart. I shared the news with Dr. Abigail during our next session. This is positive, she acknowledged, but I want you to maintain realistic expectations. Recovery is rarely linear, and there may be setbacks along the way. Your role now is to focus on your own healing, regardless of Gregory's journey. Her advice proved wise. In the months that followed, I received occasional updates from Rebecca. Gregory completed a 30-day inpatient program, then began outpatient treatment. He had good days and bad days. He wasn't ready to speak to me yet, she reported, but he had stopped blaming me for his problems. progress, however small. Meanwhile, I found my own path forward. The experience with Gregory had awakened something in me, a determination to use my remaining years meaningfully. When Martha suggested we start a support group for residents estranged from family members, I immediately agreed to co-facilitate. Our first meeting drew 7 residents, each with their own painful story of disconnection from children or grandchildren. By the third meeting, our number had doubled. We called ourselves the Bridge Builders, focusing not on blame or victimhood, but on healing and establishing healthy boundaries. I never thought I'd say this, confessed Henry, a retired postal worker whose 3 children had cut contact after a political disagreement. But Eleanor's story gave me courage to stop sending money to my son whenever he asks. I've been enabling his irresponsibility for years. For months after Gregory's visit, I received a truly unexpected call. It was Vanessa, my former daughter-in-law. "Eleanor, I hope you don't mind me reaching out," she began tentatively. "Rebecca mentioned what happened with Gregory, and I've been thinking about you." We chatted for a few minutes, catching up on her life. She had remarried and moved to Colorado. Then she hesitated before saying, "There's someone who'd like to meet you if you're open to it. Tyler, my son. Your grandson." I gripped the phone tighter. "Grandson? I don't understand." "Tyler is 15 now," Vanessa explained gently. "He was born right after Gregory and I separated. Gregory doesn't know about him. I tried to tell him many times, but he always refused to talk to me." The revelation left me breathless. A grandson I never knew existed. A child who shared my blood, who had been living his life entirely separate from mine for 15 years. "He's been asking about his father's family," Vanessa continued. "I've shown him pictures of you and Franklin. He'd like to know his grandmother if you're willing." 2 weeks later, Vanessa and Tyler visited Sunny Pines. I waited in the garden, my heart pounding as they approached. The boy was tall for his age, with Franklin's eyes and my chin. He carried himself with a teenager's awkward self-consciousness, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Hi," he said simply when Vanessa introduced us. "I guess I'm your grandson." Something about his directness, so reminiscent of Franklin, brought tears to my eyes. "I guess you are," I replied with a smile. "And I'm very happy to meet you." That first visit was brief and somewhat awkward, but it opened a door. Tyler and Vanessa began visiting monthly. We discovered shared interests in mystery novels and baseball. I helped him with history homework via video calls. Slowly, we built a relationship that felt natural and genuine. 6 months after his initial visit to Sunny Pines, Gregory completed his treatment program. Rebecca arranged a supervised visit with a counselor present. I prepared myself for days beforehand, unsure what to expect. Gregory looked different when he arrived, thinner, less polished but somehow more present. His designer clothes had been replaced by simple jeans and a button-down shirt. The practice charm was gone, replaced by a nervous authenticity that reminded me of the boy he'd once been. "Hello, Mom," he said quietly. Our conversation was difficult, halting, filled with long pauses and careful words. He didn't apologize directly for his past behavior or the confrontation months earlier, but he acknowledged his addiction and the harm it had caused. "The trust you set up," he said toward the end of our visit. "It was exactly what I needed, even though I hated it at the time. The old me would have taken that money and lost it within weeks." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning. We agreed to monthly visits, with Rebecca present initially. There were setbacks. Missed visits when the pull of gambling tempted him again. Moments of resentment when old patterns threatened to re-emerge. But there were also signs of the son I remembered. A birthday card written in his own hand. A phone call just to check how I was feeling. Small gestures that meant more than grand promises. The following Thanksgiving brought a moment I'd never thought possible. A small family gathering in the Sunny Pines community room. Gregory and Rebecca, still working on their marriage but committed to the process. Vanessa and Tyler, initially uncomfortable around Gregory but warming as the day progressed. Martha joined us as my chosen family. The conversation was sometimes stilted, the connections fragile, but it was more than I had dared to hope for a year earlier. As I looked around the table, I realized that the painful confrontation with Gregory had been necessary not just for him, but for me. By standing firm, by refusing to enable destructive patterns, I had reclaimed my own worth and dignity. I had demonstrated to myself and others that love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be used. Sometimes the strongest act of love is setting a boundary and holding it, even when every maternal instinct urges otherwise. Before we eat, I said, raising my water glass in a toast, I want to thank each of you for being here today. This past year has taught me that family comes in many forms. Blood relatives, yes, but also friends who stand by us, former relationships that evolve rather than end, and new connections we never expected to make. I'm grateful for all of you. Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. Gregory's recovery is ongoing, with both progress and challenges. Tyler visits regularly, bringing teenage energy and curiosity to my quiet life. Martha and I still lead the Bridge Builders group, now with 15 regular members. And I've found a peace I never expected in these later years, a strength born from standing up for myself when it mattered most. If you're facing a similar situation with family members who only appear when they need something, remember that true love sometimes requires difficult boundaries. Have you ever had to stand firm with family for your own well-being? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and self-worth. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the courage to make the hard choices that lead to healing in your own life.